So some people pair their keep going marker, and they have a terminal, what we call a terminal bridge, where you release the dog to reward like yes, only they will use their keep going marker with a release to not reward sometimes and a release to reward sometimes, right? So they could say, use yes the way we use good. You're healing along or doing something, yes, that means keep going, good job. And then yes, okay, when you want to deliver when a release with reward or those types of things. And then they have a separate non-release to reward and those kinds of things. And somebody was asking, could I have yes, okay, when it's going to be a reward, and just okay when it's going to be a release not to reward. And I had said to her that I would use a separate one. So the dog, it's clear when the dog's getting a reward and when they're not getting a reward, right? And so for me, and by reward, I mean typically a primary reinforcer, food, toy, some interaction like that. There's lots of things that when I release my dogs, I mentioned my dogs have okay as a release, but no reward. We're not working, you're not getting food from me, you're not getting a toy from me. I use that for coming out of your crate and going through doors and releasing you and hiking, getting off your bed, those kinds of things. But some of those behaviors can be reinforcing to a dog, right? And so for me, it was an interesting question because what's clear in the dog's mind when they're getting a reward and not getting a reward, that's important to me, right? I want to be able to say, when I say this, you can stop doing what you're doing, but no reward, right? And I use that to control, one, where they're focused, and two, the amount of arousal, right, that I've created. So if you're on your bed and I say, okay, you can get off your bed, but no high value rewards following. So I don't create a whole bunch of arousal over your bed. So okay means you're not getting anything other than getting off your bed. Now, for a certain dog, maybe that's very rewarding, right? So if I have my dog and he really wants out of his crate, and I say okay and let him out, that's valuable to him. Like he may be excited, yay, I get to get out, but it's not what we would consider a primary obedience reward in those circumstances. And then just making sure it's distinct for your dog, like which ones you use. You can use any variation on good followed by yes to reward, or good followed by break to reward, and then if you have a separate one, which means no rewards following, that's useful for us, right? Not only to control arousal. You'll notice, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about engagement, but especially when we talk about motivation, which is that release to reward is inherently more valuable than giving a dog a reward in place, right? So if my dog with good is a reward, it's a conditioned reward, right? Yes is a conditioned reward, your release to reward. Yes is more valuable to my dog than good is, because not only do they get released from the behavior, something happens, and something happening inherently is interesting, but also there's movement involved. And for a lot of our dogs, chasing something is interesting to them. Like lots of dogs that have any kind of predatory drive or movement-based drive, if I say yes and move the reward, not only are they released, but also they chase the reward and go get it. Versus if I hand you a piece of food, it's 100% about the food drive and hunger, right? If you're food motivated and you're hungry, then that's great, right? But there's no movement, no dynamics involved. And so yes tends to be a higher value reward than good does. And how much higher depends a lot on the individual dog and their temperament, right? And so there are certain types of behaviors with certain kinds of dogs where I don't necessarily want to create a lot of arousal. I mentioned my place bed. I want my dog on the place bed. I use them around the house and things like that. I don't want my dog super jacked up there. So when I release them off the place bed, I say, okay, and you don't get anything. You can get off, but nothing exciting is happening. If I release them off the place bed with something exciting, they're on the place bed anticipating higher value rewards, the release to reward, and they get jacked up on their place bed, right? Then they're in a higher state of arousal on the place bed. Whereas if I'm doing something like foot targets with my dog, I'm sending them to a foot target. We use these for obedience, for send-aways, for directional cues, for jumping, for all kinds of advanced obedience things. I want my dog fired up for those. I want my dog going to those fast and with energy. So I frequently release them off their foot target with a yes to a dynamic reward. So now they're on the foot target like, come on, release me. And they like the foot target, so they go with more energy. I've created more arousal there deliberately, and less arousal for another behavior deliberately. And so having the option to release your dog from behavior to reward versus release your dog to behavior from a behavior without reward is useful, not only to go on with your life and keep focused, but also to control an arousal level with any given behavior too.